We will be talking again with another artist. We do every week, and as the purpose of this show is to get behind the mind of the artist. It's to me, it's become really obvious that we're living in an indie universe where so many artists now, have to create and manage their own career and do their own promotion. And they write songs, they put together a business team, they put together a band, they have recording sessions, they do promotionals, they go on tour, and it used to be all done by a record label. And today it's done by the individual artist himself, and success is elusive. There's a lot of things you have to think about. It's a difficult career, and the music has become in this completely a business. So that's the purpose of the show. We want you to introduce you to artists you may know, artists that you should know about, and let them explain to you the process of creating music, so you have a better appreciation, understanding what artists do besides standing up to perform, which is the end product, as well as recording. So without further ado, and without any more discussion, let me bring on our guest this week. The guest this week is Alex Harris. Alex Harris what you'll find is fascinating. He's a vocalist, a songwriter, an actor, and he has his own philanthropic enterprise. He's done a lot in a very short time, and you're going to hear a lot more from Alex. I think you're going to be very impressed when you hear his music if you hadn't heard it already. So I think everybody's in for a treat. So Alex, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mel. I'm so glad to be a part of your show. Excited.
I'm glad you're on the show. I think a lot of the artists, I'm not sure how familiar you are, a lot of the artists you'll recognize right away have been on the Power Hour. And I've had on Annie Lennox, and I've had on Billy Ocean.
Oh, wow, yes.
And I've had on, a lot of old school performers who've been on the show. Also, I've had on Mesa and Brian Culbertson.
Wow.
And Bob James. So I've had a lot of people, that are quite prominent in the industry. Pieces of a Dream, great jazz band.
Great, yes.
So you're in good company, and they're in good company with you.
Love it. I love it. Thank you.
Good. So look, it's really an honor having you here. So, the purpose is to get to know you better. I want fans and our listening audience to know more about who you are, not just to listen to your music, but know what is behind the music and what you bring to the table, what's unique about your style, everything. So, many of our listeners, they're getting more familiar now with the difficulty of being an artist these days and all the different hats you have to wear. So, we'll be filling them in, and you'll be telling them your unique style and how you create your music. So I like to start off all the time with the artist telling everybody, what's up? what are you doing? What music have you dropped lately? What's in the works? Where are you going to be performing? What venues? So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing?
Well, right now it's been really busy, focused on my new EP that is going to be released in May. Right now the date is May 5th, so stay tuned for that. We're gearing up for the promotions for that. I've been running a show here in St. Petersburg, Florida, called Live on Central. I've hosted a show, perform. We've had artists such as Gregory Porter. We've had Moonchild. We've had Anthony David, and the list goes on. That a show that I produce and perform and host a show. It's been really great. So I've been focused on that while also prepping for the promotional performances, which we're planning to be all over. We just got back from South by Southwest, doing showcases and promoting the upcoming stuff out in Austin, Texas. So we're super excited about everything that is happening and what's about to happen. So as I stay tuned, we're going to be making some amazing announcements about shows coming up shortly.
Wonderful. Well, at least you're keeping busy. A lot going on.
Yes.
Well, look, what I'd like to do is to start giving people some insight into how you got the music bug, and starting with your family experience. So why don't you talk a little bit about your family and whether it was music in the household, and we'll kick things off.
Yeah. Well, I always love to share because I'm from a big family of 8 children. And so I'm in the middle. And in addition to that, there were a couple, always kids around because my parents are educators. My dad not only is an educator, but he also is a preacher. And so of a small congregation in a city called Manchester, just outside of Atlanta by an hour and 15 minutes. So we grew up basically in the middle of nowhere. and but well, we got the music bug. I was sharing with someone literally earlier today about there was music in us, and then we found ways to express it. My first expression was not only just singing, but taking the buckets from my neighbor's backyard and making my first drum set. Took the pine tree branches of Georgia, all the pine trees, and those were the branches were my first sticks. And my brother, one of my brothers, he played, took the rubber bands from the collard greens, the orange or the red rubber bands that they would wrap at the marketplace around the collard greens. He took those and made him his first guitar, a 4-string guitar. He wanted a bass so badly. And the oldest brother started to play keys. So that was we just heard it. And we started to express ourselves, what we heard in us in whatever way. And it wasn't a thing where our parents, had even musical instruments around the house. We just found things to create the musical sound. And from that, they were like, wait a minute, we need to get these kids some instruments. So my parents purchased my first drum set from Sears. For people who may or may not remember, when Sears sold everything, we were super young, but we were so happy. And later we went to a real music store and got a drum set. But that's how it got started. That's what started the music bug. Started writing when I was about 12 years old. So the story goes on, and the brothers they formed a group that sang in our dad's church. Started traveling at many churches throughout the central part of the South, and then later we did some stuff that went national.
Wow. Okay. Just so you know, I've been to Manchester. I used to live in Atlanta. I lived in Buckhead.
Wow.
And I had friends that lived in Manchester.
I very seldom find or meet someone that actually even knows where it is.
Well, I know exactly where you're from. So, look, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the A Boys and how that began? Obviously, it involves your siblings, but there's an interesting quirk in their names. That's where the A Boys came from. So why don't you share this with everybody?
Yeah. So there are 5 biological brothers and one guy who happens to love music, and our parents kind of adopted him in a way. He was good friends to his parents, and his name is Antonio. So he happened to have a name. So we had Antonio, Antipas, Andronicus, Arceus, Alonzo, Alex. So that's the A Boys. And when we were thinking about a group name, my dad, we said, we brainstormed. We were sitting in the kitchen, I remember, and we was like, we could be the Harris Boys. And then he said, well, all of you have an A name. And then that worked out because our god brother actually had an A name. And so from that, we were A Boys. And later, as we grew older, we said, well, we don't want to, when we got in college or high school, I think some of us were still in high school, some of us were in college, and we said, well, we don't want to be A Boys. We don't want to be A Boys to Men, because we had Boys to Men. It would sound very corny. So we thought that let's try A7, we said, because 7 means completion or maturity. And we said also, secondly, or maybe the first thing is that God is complete for us. And then second is the completion, right? So it was ended up being 6 guys, and God was the 7th in there, and also represented maturity. So we had like a dual meaning.
That's really interesting. When did you start performing? When did did you rehearse and did you perform at the church? Where did you guys?
So the story, that's a great question, because the story is when we started to play the instruments, when we finally got our instruments, and our dad and mom would allow us to play after school. We were homeschooled, but after we finished our work, we can play. And often we did some schooling at the church there because they had the setup for us, and sometimes we did it at home. But my dad, when he would come from work, he would allow us to practice, and then he took part of the house in the living room area and to allow us to make it our rehearsal hall. So we started doing that. But this lady who would come periodically to our parents' church, her name was Amanda King. She's a really elderly lady, and she was a missionary, so she would go and do different things. And she was having this, what they call a program in the South. And she put together her program, and she asked if we could come. So we said, oh, that's our opportunity to start a group. And so that's how we started to decide what the name will be and all that. And from that, we did that one performance. Then somebody else wanted us to come to their church and perform. And we had in the little small surrounding little cities of Manchester. And then later we were performing in Columbus, in Atlanta, Alabama, later in other states like Florida, Carolina. And it grew from there. That's how it all started. And always singing at our dad's church, and that's where we really got started. I remember my first song was one of those call and response songs, and they were saying, "I get joy when I think about what He's done for me," talking about God. And so I learned that as a kid. I must have been about 4 years old or something like that. And that was my first time like singing publicly, and then of course I continued after that and start to do things. By 11, 12 years old, I was writing my own song. And my first song on the radio was called Hold On. And I was 13 years old, and I remember that vividly.
Wow. So did you guys record?
We did. We started recording ourselves. It was when you would record on Cakewalk, and we learned how to use Pro Tools and all the other Logic and all that later. But we still, the Cakewalk is still around. But that was one of our first ones that we used before Logic. Cakewalk is a digital recording system you get on your computer, and it was. I think Cakewalk at that time may have only been a few $100s because I think some of the others were a little bit more costly. And so it was very economical that we could afford to create. And one of my brothers and I sat in the bedroom, and we called our first studio Access Corner because the studio was set up in the corner of the room. So early recordings are where you record at Access Corner, and then we learned where you can go get, things duplicated. But that's when we record. I should back up. Before we ever recorded at home, we went to this studio, and this guy named was Suwat in Columbus, Georgia. My oldest brother found out, and we went there all day. We didn't have any idea that it would take the length of time. It was like $25 an hour, which is most studios still do today. And that came with the engineer and the recording, but we thought we were going there for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and that will be it. We didn't realize when you're recording is much different than going to sing at the program. And it's a real process for a 3-minute song. Sometimes it can take months, even today, for some of the top talent, but we didn't have a clue at that time. And so we recorded our first songs for gospel we call demo, and we were super excited, and we started to record it on cassette tapes and send it out, and thought we would get a major record deal because that was very ambitious.
That's fascinating. When you talk about you didn't realize how long it takes to record a song, and it could be days, weeks, and months. Bruce Springsteen is known to be a maniacal perfectionist, and typically one song takes 6 months to a year. He won't let go of it, and yeah, that's something that we will talk about a little bit later. How do you know when a song is finished?
I know that's a very great question, but it does take that long sometimes because of different nuances, right? Even with this one record, we thought we'll be finished at one time, and then there were some technical things that we wanted to do sonically, and we wanted to capture also the spirit of the music in and of itself. that it remains very authentic to who I am. And I think music should, um, as a musician, as a creator, as an innovative thought thinker, I think that, when we talk about finding new methods or ways and say, how can I express, and it's relevant myself, my creativity in a relevant way without compromising my authentic self, right? I want to capture, I don't my gospel roots. I want to capture everything I've experienced, whether participated or observed about love and whatever that I'm writing about humanity, which I have a song titled that. So I think there's a way to do that, and then you have to find a way to share that experience. And you say, what is the um, way that I feel that represents, the message that I'm trying to share effectively. Simple, very similar to writing a paper or an article or whatever, or talking when you just kind of grappling for the right words. You want to make sure that it comes across in a way that it is it is it comes across what your intention is.
Yeah, I understand you completely. I've done a lot of writing. I've written books and articles, and sometimes you can spend hours on one sentence trying to get the exact context and the appropriate words and the sequence of the words, and then how it relates to the previous words and the previous sentence and the previous paragraph, and it's just, I understand what you're talking about. Music is nuanced, just like writing.
Right,
It's,
right.
and,
That's
so everyone has a different pace and everyone has a different sense of what's appropriate or at least meets a standard that they're looking for. So it's varied, and it varies from song to song, even with one artist.
yes,
Sometimes you write a song, and you can turn it out in a few days, and and it just flows. The
that's
creative
exactly
process is
right.
mystifying.
It is, and when it's knowing when it is done, right? It is about not trying to. You keep tampering with it, but you want to know when it's done. It's like we have this saying that the song will tell you what it wants or what it needs, and then when you do it, then it's done, right? And we say if it's good, it's good, and if it tells you it needs something else, it's kind of like trying to say, oh, I want something to eat, right? But then in that whatever it is hits the spot is what we say. Oh, that hit the
Yeah.
spot. Oh, that did it for me.
This is an interesting discussion to me because when I had Brian Culbertson on, he told me about a song that he had created and, of course, worked with a team and worked with studio cats. And, when it was finished, he sat and listened to it. And he said, gee, it needs a horn. And so he went back in and he had somebody add a horn section. So, sometimes it appears to be over. But then when you listen to it, after a few days or a week, you pick things up that you may not have noticed before. So, the process of completion is always a matter of when does it represent my best artwork, and when is it over-representing and starting to really interfere with the style and the content of the music and the lyrics. You don't want to overproduce it, and a lot of music is overproduced.
Right, right, right. Sometimes the songs say, "I just want a vocal and guitar." Sometimes it says, "I want vocal guitar and strings or whatever." Or sometimes it needs a solo. Sometimes it needs, like we said, horns. Or sometimes it needs backgrounds. Or sometimes it doesn't need background. It's just need to be right there in your face. And I think when we are sensitive and we become one with the music, I've heard people talk about becoming one with the music. I think when we do become one with the music, we there's a lot of things that, as a creator or a person part of the creative process, there are a lot that we can discover, a lot we can learn even about ourselves and our creative process. And so it's always an adventure. It's always a pleasant adventure, actually, to explore things about my own creative process and my ability to execute that which I hear and see, and especially working collaboratively, which I enjoy doing much.
Yeah, we're going to talk about collaboration too a little bit later also, because that's an art in itself. Choosing who to collaborate with. You know, um,
Right.
uh, so many recordings have a featured artist working with the artist that's the primary artist on the recording. So how do you choose a featured artist? How do you know who to bring on? So we'll talk about a lot of that stuff. But I want to talk about a little bit. Am I incorrect? But you didn't participate in music in public school because you were homeschooled. So
Right.
so during those years when you were homeschooled, you kept on touring with A7 in
Yeah.
summertime.
Yeah. In the summertime. So we did. Well, we performed during school too, but it was in a way like we would go away for a couple months at a time or a few weeks at a time in the summers. When we were well, the young. I'm in the middle, so the younger one of the younger brothers was in high school, and so that worked out. And we were in college, but we still performed during our school. We would fly out sometimes on a Friday, come back Monday morning, go to class. For our classes. It's always been faith, music, education, and that's those were the pillars of our foundation. And then, of course, the fourth will be community, because um, or our family, because that will those are the things that we we were taught, we exercise, we learned from our own environment, and still even today, that's very important. And so it was always one thing. It wasn't like, oh, just focus on this, then go do that. Go to school, go do music, go to church, family, all of just like the to-do list every day.
Who lined up the tours for you? Who got you the dates and where were you touring to?
Yeah, so fun fact, I was 13, 14 years old, and I can't remember now. I'm trying to remember now how I came across in some, it had to be some mailer or something that I saw a an ad about book your own tour, right? And when I saw the book title, Book Your Own Tour, I ordered it. Now, little did I know at that time that most of the books, most of the touring sites were clubs and things, and they weren't going to have, because we were doing gospel, they weren't going to have, us in there. But what I did learn from that, a couple of things, is how to do a performance contract, which I was able to create um, for our group band. And my oldest brother and I were very passionate about, and we're reaching out to people, and we're not afraid or shy about that. And because I would cold call churches, cold call promoters. There was a guy who had an agency that I came across trying to book their band, and developed a relationship as a teenager via phones. I don't think we saw each other. I saw him, but he didn't see me because they were performing, and we never got a chance to meet in person. But his name is Larry McCowan. They worked with a quartet gospel group, and he had a book of contacts, and he was just sharing them with me. I would say, hey, Larry, and
Oh,
all the way up to Canada. So I booked our band all the way up the East Coast. My brother had in college, he had met a few other people with churches, and they would do festivals. And then people would be, and then one thing led to another. Folks just start to call as well. And that's how we built. So we booked it, recorded it, performed it, everything ourselves. And
well,
we really learned how to do the industry.
you don't have to give away the exact amount, but how did you develop a pricing model? How did you do that?
Well, based on other people, what other folks were doing, like we call some of the prominent agencies, we kind of once A7 got a record on radio and we start charting on Billboard, we had an idea of what we would charge based on what people were getting in our genre.
Okay.
And so we know if they were like a number one, we weren't going to be charging with the number one. So we use that kind of as a guide, like what's the median, what's the lower end. And with churches, sometimes we learn from some of the established gospel artists. With some churches, they would at that time they would feel, I mean, still some today feel a certain way about quote unquote charging, but we would call it an established, love offering. So we establish what we want to get I had to say love offering, but so we understand the language. So one thing it did, it became a great foundation for us in understanding certain things about the industry in of itself, because it really doesn't matter what genre, whether you rock and roll, folk, country, R&B, gospel, pop. There's certain things that are the same, right? It's
Right.
about business. It's about how you network, how you build the relationships. Relationships are relationships. Humans are humans. Consumers are consumers. It's like any store. You don't care if you go to church or you don't. You're atheist or whatever. There's certain things about our human existence that we share. Music is one, and business is one, right? Regardless of genre or the way it's expressed, but the behind the scenes is the same. So I think that we learned a lot that we've been able to carry over into a lot of that what we do. I mean, I perform, but um, two of my other brothers are also heavily in the entertainment industry and work with me on my stuff as well occasionally.
So
And
I just want to clarify. Did you do the bookings for the band? Did you do it?
It was me and my oldest brother, and then I was a primary. Yeah, we were the primary. Then my sister, one of my sisters, would sometime be the voice of what we created, and some she traveled with us occasionally, because the sisters performed with us doing background for a little while, and they were like, "This is not something I want to do," and so one of the sisters, she loved like the booking agency stuff, and so she did that for a while, and even set up her own little LLC, and we were her only client. As a representative, really wasn't an agent, but it was a representative, and she represented us on occasion. And sometimes I would write the emails or whatever, and she would represent, because I was really vested into fascinated one with the industry, and it's on the business side as well as the performance side. I just naturally love both sides, and just still do. And fortunately to have a team now, I'm not doing everything.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit more too. Okay, so now you head off to college. Okay, and um, did did you play music in college? What was your major, and where was your
Yeah,
music career then?
yeah. In college, I mean, I was one of the three of the brothers actually majored in creative music technology. I didn't. I studied classical vocal with Dr. Anderson for 3 years, and that's all I did on the music. Oh, and then I took piano classes as I learned how to read some of the music and learn music theory, um, and did that. But as far as music majoring, I didn't. I was very interested in sociology, well, psychology and sociology, and then I became even more interested in sociology or human services. So I ended up majoring in that, and then minoring in psychology in undergraduate. In graduate school, though, I majored. My masters were MSW, which is a Master's of Social Work, and MTS, a Master's in Theological Studies. And I also did extended studies in Adolescent Counseling. And my doctoral degree was in organizational leadership with a folks in curriculum development. And all came full circle because everything that I did, I always integrated the arts or music, right? And it now plays out in my philanthropic work.
Did you tour with A7 still when you went to college?
Oh yeah, we were every summer up, and yeah, we did that until we decided to, we started saying, okay, one brother wanted to focus more on finishing his dissertation at that time, and then writing. He became an author and professor, and another brother wanted to study, finish law school and study for the bar, which he passed, and now he's been an attorney for a little bit. Another brother wanted to do producing, wasn't really interested in the travel component, wanted to be, the producer. He has become a great producer and Grammy Award winning producer and Emmy Award winning, and has, he's actually co-produced this record with me, and both all the songs you play, we produced together. And uh, the other brother became a musical director with his company, and you see a lot of his works everywhere. I mean, recently a world tour with Coldplay for the opening act. And so, yeah, so we're all still actively involved, and our sisters are have to make sure I give a shout out to our sisters. They're doing great as well in many different areas of business, from working with government to teaching at university. And our youngest sister is doing her thing as an actress and singer in New York and working in a lot of independent theaters. So,
Uh, so when did you decide to go solo? When did that happen, and how did it happen?
yeah, it happened around the same time when everyone kind of decided, once we graduated from college, we thought that maybe we should do the solo stuff. And at that time, I wasn't sure exactly how about it. So I took a brief hiatus, just trying to figure out my sound, what I want to do. I knew I felt an expansion of what I do beyond just one genre, because in college I did classical music, I've done other genres of music, but how do I take that to market where I'm not kind of pigeonholed into one genre? I wanted the people to appreciate the gift of music in whatever way that I felt I could express, right? And so that started to evolve, and then I put out a couple of songs myself, the song "Hope for Us," and then I performed it at the historic Apollo Theater, and so it's been a journey, and then that it was well received, and then I did another song called "I Am the One," and it was cool. It was just pressing up, putting it out there, and putting it on a few CDs, even though some people still have it, but we went to digital, and so then finally I was able to do an independent joint venture, which we put out, "The Falling for You," and that record with and right before we did that record, though, we did "Make It Better" and "Humanity" and all that, and so it was a little journey, just sprinkling here and there until we put together some songs, put together the Frequency EP. And so we're super excited now that, as I said earlier, we're in May, we'll be coming out with the new music. Uh, that is the title of this is the title cut is "Lose My Religion." So,
Well, we're going to play some of your music tonight. Let people really hear what you produced. Um, how would you describe your musical genre? You started saying that you took classical, and you ventured into other genres. How would you
yeah, I
describe
mean,
it currently?
yeah, it's a soul music, soul R&B music. I think that from a genre perspective, and just as a singer, I think from a stylistic perspective, I'm a soul singer. That's an integration using my classical technique of how I breathe and how I engage, the melody, and but my interpretation comes straight of my experience from the South and the passion in when I sing with from the gospel roots in church, and so it is part of the everything that I am. But it's definitely in the soul R&B
Yeah,
category.
yeah. One of the things I'm thinking of when I think about you, I'm thinking about somebody I really love, John Batiste. And John
Yes,
Batiste,
yes,
he's a trained classical music and piano pianist.
yes,
He classically trained, and he samples the old school beats and rhythms, and
right.
updates it. And there's people like you and John Batiste and Bruno Mars that are they're bringing old school in an updated fashion and keeping traditions alive. And introducing it to new generations. And I think it's so important. It's not just original music, but even bringing covers and remaking covers. Do you do any covers? Or is everything you do original?
Oh no! In my shows, I do covers. I cover often Al Green, Otis Redding, sometimes Ray Charles, Sam Cooke. Those are the main people I cover. Oh, Benny King, and um, uh, also Bill Withers.
Oh, all
Yeah,
my favorites.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I've covered in our sets that we do. We'll pick and choose here and there a couple of covers. I mean, I've been recently recorded and started to cover the Rolling Stones, Satisfaction. So,
Which song?
Satisfaction.
Oh, you covered that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we pay homage to I considered the fathers and mothers of soul music in many different ways. I've done some Aretha Franklin stuff too. Yeah.
Who covered Satisfaction? Otis, or was it Wilson Pickett?
Otis.
Was
Well,
Otis? Okay.
I think both actually did it.
Both of them did. I thought so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I know Otis Redding. I think with one of the festivals who became one of the popular.
Yeah. You know, I had after Otis's tragic plane crash, Larry Dodson became the lead singer for the Bar-Kays. That was the band that Otis performed with. And Larry was on my show talking about, you know, he told me something so interesting. He said, you know, the Bar-Kays had 20 number 2 Billboard hits. I said, well, how about number 1? He said, never. And I said, why? And he said, Michael Jackson.
Wow.
Isn't that funny? Great story.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. All right. Well, look, let me play one of your songs. I want people to hear your wonderful music and your wonderful voice. All right.
Oh, thank you.
So, which one would you like me to play first? Would you like me to play Religion or?
I think Falling for You, because there's a story to the whole sequence.
Okay. Let me play that, and afterwards you can tell us about it. Okay.
Yes, sure.
Lifetime of lovers seemed like a long time until I met you, girl. You changed my mind. Take me to heaven every time. More happiness than money can buy. The world keeps spinning around. Oh, yeah, you're the good I've been waiting for, and I won't let go. Yeah. Every day I keep falling for you. And love is everything about you. Every day got me feeling brand new. Yeah, crazy about the things you do. Every day I keep falling, can't resist the falling for you. Every day I keep falling for you. Oh, yeah. Just another man from an average town, sweeter than honey, mama, look what I found. In this big world, so much coming at me. Wake up to you is all that matters to me. Let the world keep spinning around, oh, my soul. You're the good I've been waiting for, and I won't let go. No. Every day yeah. Every day you got me feeling brand new. I'm so crazy. Yeah. Every day I keep, and I can't resist. I can't resist the falling for you. Falling for you. Oh yeah. I'm falling. Every day, every minute, baby, yeah. I can't help it, no. So why let the world keep spinning around? I found a place for my soul, been waiting for, and I won't let go. Every day I keep falling for you, yeah. I'm in love, you.
great track. Excellent.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
I just have to comment that, first of all, I think there's a genre of soul, Southern soul, and that's, I think, clearly what you represent. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the other thing is, the Al Green influence, in your music and your voice. And I say this as a compliment. You're the closest I've ever heard to Al Green, and you bring such a beautiful tone in your voice.
Thank you.
And it's the way it's even the way you bend words. I'm listening carefully, and you really have a great understanding for the lyrics and the music that you create as a vocalist.
Thank you. I've always wanted people to understand what I'm saying, but also feel what I'm saying in whatever way that I can express that, because I think music is not just about what is said from an audible perspective and language, but even when we don't understand the language. When I was in South Korea touring and saw the reactions when people couldn't speak my language and neither could I speak their language without an interpreter, vice versa, they could feel the music and feel the energy that rolls off when my efforts to express or convey what I'm saying. And to me, that was very powerful. And I think that when we talk about Frequency, which was the name of the first EP, it really was about how powerful music is and the frequencies that's all embedded into it, and how it can really just impact the human experience in such a positive way. So I'm glad to hear your response, because that's something. And Al Green is one of my favorite artists among a lot of the ones I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's just an icon. He's just, he's so special. And you mentioned Bill Withers, and Bill Withers is another, I can tell,
yes.
a very interesting influence after you told me that, and I've listened to your music before.
Yes.
I could just hear so many of their methods of creating music in your music. So, okay, let me ask you another couple of questions about
Sure.
When you created this song. Did you have the lyric in mind? Did you have the rhythm or the beat in mind? How did you go about it?
No, so it was, when I wrote it, it was in 2020 when everybody was at home, somewhere, like that, kind of locked away. And I was sitting at the piano right after dinner, and I started to just play this melody, the kind of the foundational melody of the song, and then started to just sing the song. Lifetime of love seemed like a long time till I met you, girl. You changed my mind. And I was singing it to my wife, actually, and I said, "Oh my God, that's a song!" And so I started to write. And realized that sometimes, when you think about love, when in a very singular way, or being with someone, when you talk about a lifetime, you say, "Oh wow, that's a long time." But when you find that special someone, and it can change everything, the way you think, like, about whatever it was, right? And there's a commercial around that. They said, "Oh, I said I'll never do this," and then they end up doing this. I'll never do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's the same concept, and it's kind of the way our human experience works. And so I wanted to capture that and just also amplify how beautiful love is, right? And I think we all think of it in some way or another at some point in our life, but that's everything. How we love brings us into this world in some way or another. It's the expression of what are some of the behaviors, I should say, of love that brings us into the world, and then also the feeling of the forever yearning to feel that whatever it is, whether it's from friends or family, the people we work with, we like to feel accepted, like to feel those things that vibrate from the root, from the love, right? And then the romance of that for those who want to experience that. So is so many different branches of love, right?
Yeah.
I have that, that very friendly, very romantic, very, fun.
On the production side, do you have an engineer you work with all the time, or do you work with the same band, or do you bring in cats into the studio? How do you go
Yeah.
about recording?
Yeah, so the live band is different. Well, the live band records on have recorded on some things, but the recordings I've done recently have been different. The consistent person that does a lot of the programming around whatever we use has been my brother. On Falling for You, two of my brothers are performing. One is playing the organ, the other is playing some of the other programming around it, and we work with a guitarist I've worked with for a long time. John Fitzgerald McGill, the gentleman who co-wrote that song with me out there, share with him. His name is Chris Willis, who's done a lot of work with different artists. Is a writer and singer as well. But the production, the engineer is Alonzo Vargas, right? Alonzo has worked with a lot of different people, different artists. And so this song is not any different than some of the others that he's worked with as far as the quality and everything that he brought to the table to make sure to the mixing console to make it what it is. So we're super excited for what we were able to get and for it to be on the charts for more than 29 weeks. And we made it to #1 on the indie soul charts, and we made it to number 26 on the Billboard R&B charts, and several other charts in between, top 10 on one of the jazz charts, top 50. So we were charting a lot of places, urban influencer, and not only here but also in Europe as well.
Why don't you tell everybody too about some of the people you've graced the stage with, some of the other artists?
Oh man, yeah. So Al Green is one of them in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, and also with John Legend. I mean, Aretha Franklin. Done work stage with some artists may recognize Her, H-E-R. Yep. So we've been on the stage with a lot of different people and had a chance to work with them in some capacity over the time.
Yeah, and you've also had the privilege of attending presidential galas and performing in front of heads of state. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yes, President Joe Biden was one of them. Yeah, and also for the galas for the Bermuda of the Premier of Bermuda, which would be equivalent to our president, Prime Minister of Ireland. And President Barack Obama's second inaugural gala. So we've done quite a few.
Wow, I mean that's incredible. Your career is it's so diverse. One thing I just remembered, it also said that besides doing vocals and songwriting, philanthropy, you also do some acting. Is that true?
Yes, I have done some of that. I've been on some of the stages with some other recognizable names in acting, like Lamont Rucker and Leon Robinson. We've done some work together. Leon done a lot of stuff on HBO. He did the Temptation movie. And he's done a lot of stuff. And Lamont has as well, from Why Did I Get Married To, with now he's doing the Blackhamptons on BT. So have a chance to work in that space as well. Not as much as I probably would in the not so distant future, but certainly have had stepped into that room as well to exercise that talent.
Wonderful. That's so great to hear. Let me play another song, and I'm going to preface it by saying this is absolutely one of my favorite songs that you've done. That's my own.
Thank you.
My Religion.
Yeah. Lose My Religion. Yes.
Lose My Religion. So when we play that, then let's talk about that one over 15 minutes.
Awesome.
Calm, cool, collected, my MO, yeah, so smooth. under control. Yeah, never show my hand. Oh, just play the game. And win, lose, or draw, it's all the same. Rectangle inside, taking over my soul, my mind. You make me lose my mind. Over you. Got me all centered, I can't lie, kinda scared. Hear a voice deep within me saying, peace be still, yeah. And I won't question letting go of the wheel. Oh, now, wrapped, tangled in time, taking over my soul. Surrender, oh baby, making a hard-hearted man, and no such thing leaving me alone. Now that you started a fire, baby, burning, burning, burning in my bones. Taking over my soul, my mind, you make me lose. Oh, my God, now over you. Oh, that old mind I had it low. Oh, I don't wanna go over you. Oh, you can't change my mind. I'm telling you, oh, baby, oh, baby, I said,
Thank you. That's wonderful. A question, is that a Hammond organ? I was here in the back?
Yes,
and,
yes.
You know, and it has that horn riff, a classic Al Green horn riff at the end. I mean, I love that song. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And
Yes, so I had a chance, actually, another fun fact about that song. So the title in of itself is really a Southern thing, you know, and I'm sure people from the South it resonates, or at least live familiar with the lingo, lose my religion. And people will say that all the time. And so the guy who I co-wrote it with is Shannon Sanders. I was in Nashville, and we were riding around in his truck. And actually, it was the first song I ever written, a full song, riding around Nashville. And we had the track, demo of the track, and we wrote to it and start putting it back together when we went back to the studio. But the whole concept of the song was how when you find love, right? And as I said earlier, referencing a commercial, say what you won't do, and then you do it, because love is so powerful, and when you find it so beautiful that it can, you off kiltered, right? Everything that you thought you were or were doing, it can put you in a different place, and you discover things about yourself and in the love experience that you not even discovered, and that's what makes it such a beautiful thing, and that's what the song is really about. And you lose everything, right? You off kiltered from what you were on. And I say in the song, the places I used to go, I didn't think I, which is actually borrows from a gospel expression about the places I used to go, I wouldn't go anymore. Are the things I were to do. But the whole point is that you're finding love, and it's beautiful, and you're doing things that are absolutely amazing together. And so I hope that when people hear it, they just go on this kind of amazing love fit, right? And then really enjoy their the person that they're with, or just go out and just look and keep their eyes open to find love.
Well, we're starting to run out of time. I want to get to a couple more things with you. I'm just curious, if you had a bucket list and you wanted to pick an artist that you would love to collaborate or share a stage with, and it could be from anywhere, anytime, who would that be?
Well, that's a really hard one. If I travel back in time, I think maybe Aretha Franklin. Yeah, for sure. Back, when I heard what she and Ray Charles did, it was like, oh man, if I,
Yeah.
part of that, if I were born, that'd be amazing. But as far as relevant, I mean, I think it'd be great to do something with Al Green. I mean, he's still recording here and there. Also, I've always wanted to do something with people like even Steven Tyler.
Really?
So yeah,
Huh.
yeah, I think he's soulful rock and roller, and yeah. So I mean, there are so many different artists. Her, uh, Beyonce. There are a lot of different artists. I've heard different sides of them, and I was like, oh, that would be really cool. I've always had this idea, say, what if Alicia Keys and I did a duet on Bring It Home to Me? I can hear her like on the piano doing the thing, doing a version of that. So yeah, I have a lot of creative ideas in my list of things I hope to pursue and make it reality. Yeah, when it comes to collaboration.
Yeah, I never would have thought of Steven Tyler, but yeah, he's been touring with Slash. They've been doing their own shows together.
Yeah, and I saw him in person. I think it was in December 2019. I think it was. Yeah, it was amazing. Like 15 feet away from the stage, literally.
Yeah,
Intimate audience
and
down in Miami.
given the volatility of his voice, that his voice is still good after all these years, is a testimony that he must have been
Yeah,
taking very good care.
yeah, he's doing something. We should to keep that because it was very good. I mean, to hear him that up close and personal, it was just awesome. I mean, I was like, wow. Yeah, I
Right.
was blown away.
Besides yourself, are there any artists emerging today that you pay attention to?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Besides yourself, are there any artists today that are emerging as talent that
Yeah,
you've been paying attention to?
actually, yes. In fact, there are quite a few. One of the artists is out of Memphis, Southern Avenue. I think they're artists to watch. Another young lady, I'm not sure where she's from, but her name is Amanda Ray, um, and Friends. But also, you have the writer who co-wrote a lot of songs with me, but he actually wrote some songs back to us on the new EP, Josiah Bassey. Um, Phenomenal singer, writer, musician, great. And I'm glad that we had a chance to collaborate and write, and he is on this record. Yeah, I wrote with some amazing writers on this record, co-wrote from Sam Ashworth, Ruby Amanafu, also my brother David, Swagger Silius Harris. I mentioned Shannon Sanders, who co-wrote he and I, the Lose My Religion song. So yeah, we're super excited.
That's fabulous. You know, I wanted to play more of your music. We're going to have you come back on again.
Love it. Thank you so
We're
much.
running out of time. But I did want to ask you, is there anything that we left out tonight that you expressly want to tell people?
Well, I just want to reiterate what I said earlier. If you're joining now, that the EP Lose My Religion is coming out May 5th. But you can follow me on social media. We got dates. We'll be announcing a lot of performances and hopefully a city near you, if not in your city. And Alex Harris Soul on Instagram, Alex Harris.
I made this for you.
So, yeah. Oh, and you always can just go to my website where you can find all of my socials. Yeah.
Great. Well, Alex, it's been a total pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'm a big fan.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and you're providing this opportunity for me and to share the music and let your listeners know that we're out here and we're hoping to make a lot of great, good noise right now with our music.
Well, I think you made some new fans because it looks like we had over 185,000 people listening in today. A lot of people from Japan, some from South Korea, some from India, the UK, Canada.
Wow, thank you. Well, thank you. I hope you all follow and get ready to download the music. Alex Harris Soul on Instagram and Alex Harris Soul on TikTok too.
Yeah, I want to mention too, Alex, we're going to have you as featured artist in a few weeks. So I'll talk to you about that, and we'll have your music up, and people can can buy your music.
Awesome. So, thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, look, good luck to you. You're a wonderful person, great talent, and we'll have you on again.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mel. Thank you.